Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Brain Club. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. Let me share screen, get us oriented to our conversation. So, as we were just chatting about the nervous system and coming to understand it, we're going to be talking about the nervous system at work. We will hear from a panel of All Brains Belong staff exploring this topic. Before we begin, closed captions are enabled. You just have to turn them on at your end if you'd like to use them. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the closed captions transcript icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles or hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. If you're new to All Brains Belong, welcome. So we are supporting the health and belonging of people with all types of brains, and one of the ways we do that is community education like this. So you are invited to be part of our community through your participation in Brain Club. This is where we demonstrate our approach to neuro-inclusive culture for purposes of shifting broader community awareness of the issues of concern and importance to neurodivergent people in our community, so as to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world, and that then you all take it forth in your own lives, and that's how culture change happens. Everyone is welcome at Brain Club. Brain Club's for neurodivergent people and people who support neurodivergent people, anyone who's exploring their neuro-identity, and anyone with any type of brain who wants to learn about neuro-inclusive culture. This is a place where we model new ways of being in community through community panels and guest speakers and book chats to provide a way of better understanding many people's experiences through presenter stories. And for many, this is a way to feel less alone. And tonight, just as most nights, you will hear us criticize systems and aspects of systems that make it difficult for people to get their needs met and bright spot alternatives. Though we have other programs that have other functions, this one is not for medical advice or a place to address personal questions. It's also not a support group. It's a place for education. And so we are glad you're here. You're welcome to use the chat during the panel and afterwards. We just ask if you are going to use the chat, we ask that you use the big box instead of the reply threads, because the reply threads make the chat bounce up and down. And then for my own access needs, it's really hard to keep up with them and I get dizzy and then I can't actually respond to the things. So the big box would be so much appreciated. There are multiple right ways to participate here at Brain Club. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Feel free to walk or move or fidget or stim or do anything else it needs doing. During discussions, we invite you to use mouth words or the chat. You also don't need to. Observation is a valid form of participation. And in addition to affirming all aspects of identity, this is a program oriented around the collective community, making space for all. So we invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like. You may pick up some new words and new concepts. Lizzie's going to drop a link to the Brain Club Digital Resource Library if you want to look through glossary terms. But you're also welcome to ask in the chat if there's something that you hear somebody say that you're not, you haven't heard that one before. And think about how what you hear about connects to your life. If it's your first time at Brain Club, keep coming back. It might take a couple times to figure out the lay of the land, but Lizzie's going to also put the frequently asked questions, logistic stuff in the chat. All right, we have a couple of announcements. First, as always, thank you so much to our Brain Club supporters who make it possible for us week after week to be providing content and exploring these topics so that everyone can learn both synchronously and watching the recordings. If you haven't seen it yet, Brain Club the podcast launched a few weeks ago. Our second episode posted last Friday, which was last week's Brain Club. Not every Brain Club episode will make its way to the podcast because it actually takes hours to convert an episode to be a podcast. But once or twice a month that will happen. I think this one's going to go to the podcast too. So we'd love for you to check it out and spread the word. So we are continuing our conversation about understanding our nervous system, and we actually decided that this topic's so important and there's so much nuance to it that Understanding Your Nervous System Part 2 is the theme for February. Lizzie's going to drop a link to the chat if you want to, in advance, start signing up for February Brain Club, since we're just a couple of weeks away. There you go. It's in the chat. Next week, in lieu of a regular Brain Club, we have a webinar. We do webinars a couple times a year. So this one is our third annual Everything's Connected to Everything, Improving the Healthcare of Autistic and ADHD Adults. Lizzie just dropped a link to that in the chat. So that's a separate registration and a separate Zoom link. And we are going to be talking about the constellation of intertwined medical problems that commonly afflict so many people in our community. With a, it's not the same webinar as last year. If you came, it's new. You know, we have to have a shared vocabulary, but then we're going to dive deep into the autonomic nervous system as it relates to all of things management. And so here we go. Our topic tonight: your nervous system at work. What you're really going to hear us talk about tonight is access needs. Access needs, when we use that term, we're referring to anything that is required for full and meaningful participation in whatever it is that you are doing. So everyone with all types of brains has access needs. This is a quote from one of our community members a few years ago. "I don't know what my access needs are. I just know they're not being met." And I think that is so common. And so a lot of times, you know, we don't know, but we know that something's not working. And so maybe we begin from that place of this is not working, and we can work backwards. What does that mean about what needs of mine are not being met? Sometimes that's easier than working forwards, like what are my access needs? It's working backwards from when they're not being met. And so when we think about access need considerations at work, it's so many different things, from, you know, sensory processing in the environment, communication, executive functioning, dealing with technology, so many things. Another way of looking at that is that of a pie chart. We are all spending bandwidth or brain energy on different things. And depending on how our brains work, we are spending more or less of that brain energy on different things. Like, I have the kind of brain that I spend a lot of bandwidth um, processing light and sound and things that move in my space. And so once I learned that about myself, I like try to not be in those environments. And when I'm in those environments, I'm not surprised when I'm exhausted and I don't have enough energy to do the other stuff. We have a finite amount of resources, and it's about like accepting that as true. Um, all humans have a finite capacity, and coming to learn, you know, what's the relative spending of resources in these different buckets. And you'll hear us talk about that tonight. So, as it relates to understanding your nervous system at work, you know, as we've been talking about all month, our nervous system's job is to keep us safe, even at work. And so, what the autonomic nervous system does, as we've been talking about the past few weeks, is it responds to cues of safety versus threat. And so, what is going to have our nervous systems like respond is going to be different person to person, but also might fluctuate based on how much of my other resources have I spent. Like, I know that when the website that has the things moving on it, like, I know it's not a threat, but in that moment, if I'm tired and I've like been doing a lot of brain things throughout the day, I might really have a big startle response and get really dysregulated about that. So capacity varies, cumulative capacity, based on what else is going on. And what we need to regulate is also going to differ very much from person to person and, you know, moment to moment. So the idea is we all have access needs, and just sort of like thinking about your work experiences through that lens might lead to some interesting insights. What we're going to do is we're going to watch a pre-recorded panel conversation with our staff at All Brains Belong, and then we can have some time for discussion. Thank you to our panelists, Sierra, Olivia, and Lizzie. Let me get our video up on the screen. Here we go. And reshare the sound. I'm exhausted and dysregulated, which is will I ever figure out the oh, I can't be on mute when I'm playing from my hard drive. That's what we learned. Thank you. Hi, Weaver. As per usual, I'm having tech things. All right, here we go. We'll start over without my muting myself. Thank you. I'm exhausted and dysregulated, which is a great time to talk about our nervous systems. Anyway, um, I think there's a lot of people, right, who like they're just learning they have a nervous system. It's not necessarily something that people like go around and talk about and think about and all the things, and yet we go through our whole lives. So I'm wondering, when and how do you notice your nervous system when you are at work?
For me, I think it's usually I get a cue that I need to move. But I get those quite often, so sometimes I have to like improvise. And it might be tapping. It might be
Yeah.
tapping.
So your nervous system is like telling you like I need to move. I have an access need for movement, and you figure out how to do that. Some part of
Yeah,
you's moving.
yeah.
That's awesome. Anybody else? How and when do you notice your nervous system?
I was similar to you, Olivia. I was thinking of like like what does it feel like in my body to have that like dysregulation? And I was thinking as I was checking emails this morning, the difference between like an email that like triggers my limbic system versus an email that doesn't. And that like that feeling of like nausea, like clenching, muscle spasm, palpitation, like those feelings that especially I always kind of attributed to like anxiety panic attacks, being like, oh, that's a this feels unsafe. This is a dysregulated signal.
Yeah. Just like that reframing, like someone at some point told you that you have, random anxiety and random panic, but like no one told you you had a nervous system that responds to things.
Often my breathing too is a cue. Like, how am I, like I'm breathing up here or am I breathing into my belly? And I literally will put my hands there to cue,
Totally.
like, like, where do I need to breathe?
Or,
And
oh, I'm not breathing at all.
right, right.
Yeah, I don't really think about my breathing, but I do keep squishies nearby. They have like different nubs, and this one's extra squishy, so I try to keep it close. And I think I'm noticing like when I pick it up that it's helping me feel more in my body. But I don't
So you're
really
getting
notice my body
proprioception.
really. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
I've got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
You've prompted me to get my little stim rings.
Nice.
nice.
It's awesome. Um, I sometimes don't, I mean, I think that like physical symptoms, like Sierra, you mentioned nausea and muscle tightness, like I also find that like my body temperature changes. It's like all out of sorts, or or sometimes I'm just like snippy. And recognizing like, oh, I need a break. I wish that I could recognize that I need a break before I get snippy. And I think that like that's something I really work on because I get
I think that
hurried.
I think that's a really good point, Mel, because I think that I definitely have a harder time recognizing some of the more maybe like external, like behavioral type of things of like getting snippy, having a shorter temper, like my like volume and tone control are not as good. Like those things are harder for me to notice than like the internal signs. Um, and there's something I don't really think of as like an early warning sign, but totally makes sense as part of that system.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is just happening. It's just like coming in and out of regulation and dysregulation and like just recovering and returning. And it's not like I'm gonna be perfectly calm and, like the myths of like, I'm a professional, I'm gonna be calm. It's like, actually, I'm a human being. So my nervous system has responses to things. Um, I wonder if anyone, Sierra, you gave a great example about the emails. Anybody else have examples of like, like recognizing that you're dysregulated at work?
I think I'm getting better at like noticing my body signals. So I can notice like my body gets really cold when I get dysregulated. And instead of like a smaller like sign where my voice might change or something, I don't notice that, but my body does a bigger thing and then that brings it to my attention. So I like to have like maybe go get a tea or something that can be helpful if I remember.
I think for me, I often go into autopilot, so it's always after the fact that I'm like, oh shoot, I was doing, what maybe something personal happened and that kicks in, and then I'm trying to do that and do the work thing, or multitasking, and because you're trying to solve other problems, and then after the fact realizing that perhaps some time has gone by and you were in autopilot and you didn't even know it.
Totally.
Hmm.
Yes, I
I'm
relate to
And
finding,
that.
then of course the automatic for me, and I think I talked with Sierra last week about this, is shame. The shame. And recognizing that when the shame kicks in, then I need to reframe that.
1,000%. And I think that like,
Yeah.
it's great that you brought that up to Sierra because I'm sure I mean I wasn't there, but I'm imagining Sierra said something around like some other feeling of shame. Like it's just the idea of like you tell someone and someone, usually the person automatically, if they're a safe
Mhm.
person, they'll say something or share something that makes you feel less alone in the world.
Right. Or just like holding up the imaginary mirror to all the people that I have said the same thing to in my community and my family and my friends. The same thing should be directed right back at us, you know?
Yes. Yes. Like the high expectations and like like a lifetime of not understanding our brains and not understanding our access needs and just like trying to, appear poised and put together and perfect without recognizing that like that those drives are, it's white supremacy and capitalism and, all the
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
I think that's such an important, like, and I just think that's so important of like that reframing of shame, that like immense, overwhelming shame feeling isn't okay, now I need to push harder, I need to get through this, I need to do better. Like, I think that's for me, that was such a motivating factor for a long time and was really ingrained as like a this is the motivation, this is the drive that gets you through the thing. But seeing that, as you were saying, Olivia, is like, this is a sign that I need to break. This is a sign that I need to step back or slow down or go get some tea or something like that. Yeah.
Or ask for help.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah. I am finding that there's been a little bit of a shift. Usually if I make a mistake, I think I'm okay around mistakes. When I forget to do an important thing, like when I drop the ball on a thing, that is usually an experience that results in like deep shame of like not being organized and not being competent and not being like all that narrative. I have noticed recently that when I drop the ball, my first reaction is I had too much on my plate. Of course I forgot about that thing. And that feels new and that feels helpful. It wasn't like something I chose. It was something that I think we talk a lot about like we talk a lot about our nervous systems on our team. And so like I spend most of my day with you all and you're safe people who talk about your nervous systems.
I also think about like ways where we can support each other, where when our nervous systems, maybe like we were just talking about, not noticing that you maybe are dysregulated, or well, especially when we work like alone, as in we're each in our own like houses doing our work, and we get dysregulated. There's nobody there to cue us, like, oh, a safe word, or yeah, you want to take a walk, so it's like, how do you create that safety when you're alone in your space, right? And maybe you've already gone an hour and you're like, oh, I was in the automatic there. So, but also like when you are in a group setting, whether it's two people working together or more, maybe there is a safe word, like where you're like, and then you're like, oh yeah, I need to take a break, or I need to do something else.
I love that. I think that would be really helpful.
That's making me think, Olivia, of how I think when especially working remotely, like the reaching out to somebody to ask for help feels a lot more intense, because instead of just like turning to somebody who's sitting next to me in an office and being like, hey, what would you do here? It's like, oh, I have to like text or send a Discord message. It feels like an extra step. And I think, I think our team does a pretty good job of making it really clear that like that is always available and that's always okay to do. But I've never thought of that being that extra step. That's a hard thing when you're remote, to like get that co-regulation or get that help when you're in that dysregulated state already.
Totally. And I think like growing our inventory of the ways that our dysregulation shows up. Like, like I know that when I start like shutting stuff down and saying no and getting rigid, like, okay, I'm dysregulated. Other team members like start fawning more. And, I think that we have that kind of awareness of each other. Um, the asking for help thing, like sometimes the story I tell myself is that I should not ask for help unless it's a really, really big deal or a really, really big thing. But today, right, today I was like, I cannot make a decision about the HVAC grate. Can you look at these with me and help me make this decision? Like, that was helpful. Like, I could have spun out about those grate covers because making a decision is really hard when I'm dysregulated and tired and all the things.
I think about we have a email tag that's like a need help responding tag, and being able to like, because I feel like one of the things that prevents me when I'm like dysregulated from like stepping back and giving space is like, I don't want to be ignoring this. I don't want to feel like I'm just like stepping away and ignoring it and pretending that it doesn't exist. And so something like that, where it's like, okay, I'm tagging this. I have a like set time where I know I'm going to review this, and I already have it set as like, okay, I need somebody else's input to help with that. I think that's a really, really helpful thing that we've created.
Yeah, and I think like in that example, it doesn't even it doesn't necessarily like feel like asking for help. Like it feels like then my next step is to collaborate with my colleague. So it doesn't feel like I'm dropping the ball or that I like am not equipped to do a thing even though I'm not equipped to do the thing. It feels different, and I think anyway, it'd just be kind of interesting to think like since that's I think an example of a really successful strategy of co-regulation, um, you know, what else that could be applied to. Of like recognizing, whatever it is, like, oh, I'm fawning, or oh, I'm getting rigid, or I'm getting snippy, or I'm whatever, like what is the action? Because the action of ask for help might feel really big, but there might be something that feels more like collaboration of whatever it is that I'm doing, even though that might not be the main problem, the main, offensive stimulus but it might be just cumulative impact on everything that has happened in this day or the last couple days or this week or this month or whatever. Um, it may be that like the next step of my activity is to collaborate, which reduces cognitive load and pressure. I will say another strategy that I use with email, if I think that this is something that I don't think I need to collaborate, but I just can't do this now. I use the snooze button on email like all the time. Like, I anticipate being regulated at 6 p.m. Snooze. Whatever that is. It might just be completely random, but it makes me feel like I don't have the looming Bronto burger like weighing me down because it's out of my inbox till 6 p.m. or Wednesday or whatever.
Right, even just like scheduling a time to deal with that. I think I like to combine that with like a brain dump of information because I need to like get it out of my head, especially if I'm like dysregulated and feeling a lot of big stuff. So I'll just like brain dump. These are all my thoughts about this right now. It's out of my head. Let's leave it. And then I have a set time that I'm going to think about it another time. And I am more able to let it go a little bit until then.
When I worked in traditional primary care, I used to get way more dysregulated, of course. But I didn't have any strategies of communicating that to everyone. So like, and the way that I think that probably there are some tendencies that persist. Like I get faster when I'm dysregulated. I have no patience and I don't really auditorily process and I just get like frustrated and flustered and all of this. And I didn't have any ways because I didn't have any language for it. I don't think I would have recognized it even as dysregulation. It was just, I just felt bad. So communicating dysregulation, that in of itself, I find regulating. What do others think about this?
Yeah, I think for sure, because it's usually you're not the only one, right? In most things, we can all say that we have similar experiences, and that's the whole point, right? It's like the shared experience is what's healing and what's regulating and what's settling. So it's just remembering that we do have safe people to communicate this with, and we have a whole community of people. And maybe it is Discord, like, oh, I'm feeling dysregulated, and I'm sure we get a million texts saying, yes, 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 yes. And it's when we're feeling unsafe, it's remembering that there is safety and it's right there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about something you said earlier, Olivia, about how hard it is when that dysregulated feeling is like what we're feeling like all the time sometimes. And I think that for me, sharing it a lot of times can be a thing that like gives me an insight into like, is this how big of a thing is this actually? How much do I need to like let my nervous system really kind of dig into this? What's the like level of the problem, I guess. I don't want to say like it's like I don't want to say there's ever any like any irrational dysregulation or anxiety or anything, but talking to other people can help give the bigger picture of okay, how big is this actually versus how big is this feeling?
Yeah, and like that doesn't mean that there's like an objective like appraisal of how
Right.
upset is okay to be, but there is that like if you have an access need for feedback, you have an access need for like reality testing, and an access need to like know where you are in time and space and relationship, like your colleagues can do that to you. So I was like, I think for me, probably my most frequently used coping mechanism is avoidance and like opting out of a thing. And I think that it was you all that I think that like my practice of opting out of situations, I felt like, can I really opt out of this? Can I just ignore this email or can I? And like you're like, yeah, you can just ignore that email. And that reflection back was really helpful. Now I just ignore things all the time and I feel much better.
Yeah, I think that because we're each other's safe spaces and we talk about these things, I think when we can tune into our dysregulation, that can also inform if our systems need to shift. Um, and if we need to set a meeting to like brainstorm something new or a new system or shifting things around.
Yeah, I think
which I
that
think is
happens all the
pretty unique.
time.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, I am overwhelmed by this thing, and we'll just like set an action meeting to like who needs to be at this discussion of this thing. And I think that like we do that all the time for different aspects of workflow. Or for me, like when I'm like really like there's too many things, there's too many things on my plate right now. And I like knowing that the last thing I do today will be meet with Lizzie, I already feel better because I know I won't have to be alone with my list. Or another thing I think that a lot of us do, I think we all do this, at different times, is like when we do feel a thing, I think we name our energy well. Like we're starting a meeting, it's like, yeah, I just want to acknowledge my energy. Because if I don't give you a narrative, you're going to make one up, and you might think it involves you, but really, like, I didn't sleep, or the barometric pressure spiked, or, any of these things.
Yeah, I guess that can be tough at times, right? Because if you fawn and you feel someone else's dysregulation, you're automatically going to think either it's something to do with you, the person that you're with, or how do I, how do I, yeah, cue safety, or because I'm not feeling safe either, right? So, I guess that's also a good question. How do you cue if you're feeling unsafe, but maybe the other person is also feeling unsafe? How do you cue safety when everyone feels unsafe?
Yeah, because it's like a conflicting access need situation
Right.
too.
Sometimes when I'm thinking like in my house, when everybody in the house is in deep burnout and like something like dishes really need to be done or something, like we'll sometimes like make a list of the like absolute necessity things, and like everybody gets to pick one and that's it, and that's all, like that's all the priority is. I don't remember where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's a great
Mhm.
strategy.
Yeah. Or what you think might be a cue of safety. Like I'm thinking of a particular incident maybe here at my house, and I was trying to support somebody and I was trying to cue safety, but they weren't feeling it the same way, or they weren't there, right? Like maybe it was humor, like we're trying to introduce a little humor, a little lightness to it, but they weren't ready for that. And then they were feeling more dysregulated. So it's like, would that be a time to, hey, what would help you feel safe right now? But maybe there's nothing, right? So it's also that.
Yeah.
Right, and making sure that it's okay to say like nothing's going to make me feel better right now, but I just
Mhm.
need to feel like this. Or like I'm not looking for fixes, I'm not looking for solutions. I'm just like naming my energy type of stuff to, as much as possible, take the pressure off the fawners in our lives. Um, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't need you to do anything. I also think that like there's the complications of rejection sensitive dysphoria and PDA. If someone were to, I mean, one of the things that's I think really helpful that is that I think none of us, um, I mean, this is at least just my experience. None of you have said this to me of just like, you seem upset or you seem dysregulated. Like that would be so unhelpful. And you know that, right? Because you get it. And I think that there's a lot of environments where that's not true because the narrative is that I should be calm and I should be happy and I should be all these things as the world's on fire.
Right. I think the way we can have that is also having the like comfort acknowledgement of like being able to like I'm thinking like when we've been doing like a meeting together, you've messaged me before, been like, hey, you're fawning. And like that's really, really helpful because I'm not noticing those things. And so like having that trust to be able to like say something that you're noticing about somebody without making assumptions of like, this is what you're feeling. It's more like, hey, I'm noticing this behavior. And especially if it's like, you've told me this is something that you do when you're dysregulated before. I'm just noticing this for you. A hard balance to find, but
And I think that in a lot of instances, we have some idea of what has been helpful for each other in the past. And so whether it is like if I'm getting overwhelmed at Brain Club, like Sierra will write my script for me in the chat. That happens. Or things like that. Because it's like how do you I mean, I think that the lens that I am usually applying is like how do I reduce demand? Not because I'm fawning and like I try to fix the situation so the person's calm. I'm not actually thinking that, which I think is what is like part of the energy of that. It's just like, yeah, I can write your script for you, and you can write my script for me, and now I don't have to think about words because words are so hard. Or like for Lizzie, I'll be like, can we make new tables? Can we color code them?
I think a lot of that just comes from like a lot of like constantly having curiosity about your brain. Because I think like the only way I'm going to know that like writing scripts is helpful when you're dysregulated is that we talk about it and you're like, oh, I found this thing out about my brain that's really helpful. I found out this was really helpful. I tried this and this. And like that, I think that has to come from like curiosity to have it be like there all the time. It is part of an organization.
Yeah, and so it's the it's co-regulation, it's co-reflection, it's like building out an archive. Like I think, one of the many things that Olivia does that is so helpful is these reflective statements that just like reflect like I have been there in that emotional state or that nervous system state that you are in. Like that is so regulating to me. And it's been like 10 years of, and that's the thing, it's also like time. You get to know somebody's nervous system.
And I think for me as a PDA or two, it really helps knowing that our team has unconditional positive regard for each other. So when we have like suggestions or we're stepping in to help each other, um, I know that everyone has my back and I can accept that as a PDA and still have autonomy at the
Yeah.
same time. That makes
Yeah.
sense, yeah.
And like we don't get to pick when we have unconditional positive regard, but like it feels like for me, it's like an access need. I need to know that I think the way I've said it before is like I need to know if people like me, but it's more like I need to have the safety of knowing that like no matter what I do and what mistakes I make or how I show up, like this is a place where I'm not going to lose this relationship. Because I'm like, it's like the attachment pieces, whether it be personal or professional attachments of just like, I will not be able to handle the rejection of this. And so I don't have to think about it. I think that's part of unconditional positive regard for me.
And that also cues safety because you know that if you become dysregulated, you're not going to lose your friends or your community. And actually, they're probably going to hold you up more, which is safety, right? You're going to love me no matter what,
Right.
right?
And I think it's just like practicing showing up and just like showing up, trying to be as authentic as the environment. Like, there's this book. I don't know if anybody's read I forget what the actual book is called, but it's the sensory trauma in autism book. It might even be in our office right now. It's so good. Anyway, the authors talk about affordances, like what does your environment afford you? And it's like, well, authenticity is afforded by my environment. If my environment and the people in it do not cue safety, I am not afforded the opportunity to show up authentically because it's not safe. And I think that's like a lot of people's, if not most people's, workplace environments do not have the affordances for authenticity.
And how dysregulating is that? Yeah.
Totally. I'm like
Burnout factories.
1000%. And so we could
Mhm.
imagine that, like, in our Brain Club audience who watches this video, like, probably most people are in, like, I'm going to just predict most people spend most of their day in environments where they can't show up authentically. And the, like, action item is, I don't think it's not to change anything you're doing, because it's like the environment is not affording you the opportunity to show up authentically, but it's just like to notice it, to notice the differences in environments where you feel safe and when you don't feel safe, and to be curious about what the factors are that contribute to that, so that you can, like, try to seek out those things that make you feel safe.
And when comfortable, share those things with the people in your life so they can also start thinking about those things for themselves when safe.
When
Um,
safe. Yeah.
Which was a big one.
I have the best team in the whole world. Thank you again to Sierra, Olivia, and Lizzie. So with that, if anybody would like to share anything that has stood out to them about what you heard tonight, anything you're taking away from this panel. Hi,
In a
Amy.
nutshell,
Oh, hang on one second. Amy's got her hand up first, and then happy to hear from you, Tanya. Go ahead, Amy.
Well, I just was thinking about when you were talking, I was doing a training on safe and sound protocol, which is about, co-regulation through like listening to music. And one of the things they said in the training was that if you think about if the scales, if the danger outweighs safety, then there'll be dysregulation. So one of the practices kind of reminds me of what Olivia was saying, is like one of the practices is to remind yourself of the safety. So you first find, like, can you find any safety in your body? It could be like your earlobe or your little toe or something. And then you find it in the environment, and then you try to find it in relationships. So it's not even necessarily a relationship that's like in front of you, but maybe just thinking of somebody where you feel safe. And it's been really helpful just to kind of remember when the unsafety is there, to like look towards the safety and away from the danger. And if you can, that's if you can.
I love that so much. And, like, just as we remind ourselves that we're always going to be, like, in and out of regulation as the environment impacts us, or people we're interacting with impacts us, and like dipping your toe into another nervous system state by thinking of anything that is safe. I love that reminds me that there's some of the exercises in the book Anchored that I think we're going to do a book chat on again in February. Talks about that exact concept. Thank you for sharing, Amy. Tanya, did you want to share something?
yeah, that is very resonated with me, but it's also our boundary. But if we push our boundaries too much in what we're doing as an individual, we can also get tired very easily, even though we might be doing that at a conference or even going out for a day to establish what we're doing. But when we come home and we relax, it just takes a lot of stuff out of it, like out of me as a person. Like I have to recover in what I did that day before. And now I can understand it's not only, yes, I gotta watch my boundaries, but it's also my nervous system and my damaged brain talking to each other, which tell me to rest. Plus, I'm dealing with chronic pain as well. That does not
Right.
help. But
Right. All these factors coming to bear on the nervous system, and with the reality that we have a finite capacity, and at some point we need to rest. We don't have to earn it. We just need it, and we need to do it. Thank you, Tanya. And I see lots of concepts in the chat: co-regulation, unconditional positive regard, safety. Yes, all of that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and we hope to see you next week as at the Everything's Connected to Everything webinar, where we'll be talking about how does supporting the nervous system, how does that unlock the management of the constellation of neuroimmune conditions that are so common in this community. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good week. Bye.